Good morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for February 11th to order. If you would all, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, item number 2 on the agenda, I'm sorry, actually it's item number 1, is the swearing in of our new Planning Commissioner, Michael Ron. Michael, if you would please rise to be sworn in.
Yes. Say good morning, Quintana Acevedo with the Clerk's Office, and I'm here to administer the oath of office to Mr. Ron. Do you solemnly swear that you will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida, that you are qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and that you will faithfully perform the duties of the Planning Commission, the office upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Thank you. Congratulations on behalf of the Clerk's Office.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item, announcements. Are there any changes from staff?
Good morning. Yes, we do. We have 2. PDMU 1508, which is American Monument Bank Westport, and item 6, PDR 1515 Indigo Subdivisions. They both have additional comment letters, which are attached to the memo.
Thank you, Ms. Knapp. County Attorney's Office, are there any changes?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioners, items to be pulled from the agenda, the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bauer.
5 and 6, please.
Okay. 5 and 6. That leaves items 3 and 4 on consent. There have been a lot of questions regarding timing, so what we're going to try to do today is work through the things that are on consent. I've got speaker cards for several folks on item number 5 and 1 for item 6. We're going to, in addition to that, item 7, I believe, has an expert witness that is has a flight scheduled. So we're going to try to get through these items as quickly as possible, but still respect the process. Ms. Knapp, could we hear the items on consent?
Sure. Number 3 is ordinance 1527, Upper Manatee 288 LLC, Manatee Land Investors LLC, Heritage Harbor Parcel 35, which is DRI number 24, to be continued to April 14th, 2016. And item number 4, PDMU 9808 GR7, which is Upper Manatee 288 LLC, Manatee Land Investors LLC, Heritage Harbor Parcel 35, also to be continued to April 14th, 2016.
Okay. In an effort to expedite the process, I skipped the minutes. So the chair will entertain any.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 14, 2016.
Thank you. Got a motion on the floor. Second by Mr. DeLesline. Are there any comments or corrections? Seeing none, chair will entertain a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. With regard to consent, chair will entertain a motion regarding the consent items.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you. Got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Rhodes. Thank you. We'll call the motion to order. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Again, passes unanimously. All right. As I stated, well, actually, the next item on the list is citizen comments. There's a lot of folks in the audience, so if you would, if you intend to speak on any item that is coming before the commission as an item for public hearing, if you would, please rise to be sworn in. And again, if you intend to speak, please be sworn in.
Do you declare or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which are about to present to this board will be truthful and accurate?
Okay. All right, the next item is citizen comments. These are items that are not on the agenda for the public hearing. Again, these are things that are not specifically identified. Is there anybody who wishes to make a general comment about something that is not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one come forward. Let's get an understanding of the participation on the different items that are in front of the board. If you're here to speak on item 5, or you have a concern with regard to item number 5, which is the American Momentum Bank Westport, if you would, please raise your hand. Okay. Yes. And then with regard to item number 6, Neal Communities of Southwest Florida LLC, is that, if that's an item of interest? Okay. So, all right. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do, it seems like the majority of the folks are here for item number 6, so, I'm sorry, item number 5, so I'd like to pull item 6 to the front and handle that quickly. Mr. Bauer, you requested the item be pulled from the consent agenda. What are your concerns?
Bear with me 1 second, please.
Sure.
Chair, would you like number 6 read into the record?
Yes, after Mr. Bauer states his concerns, please.
I just, when reviewing this, I just noticed that this is, I think, the third change to this particular matter. I just wanted to hear a little bit about the history of where we are now, potentially where, if there can be any future potential changes as we continue to approve and review different plans moving forward.
Okay. All right. So we're going to open the public hearing for item number 6, Indigo Subdivision. Ms. Knapp, if you would, please read it into the record.
Thank you. PDR 1515 ZP, Neal Communities of Southwest Florida LLC, Empire State Holding Group LLC, Anthony F. Fanto and Virgil Bryce Wagner of trustees of the Lucy L. Wagner Revocable Living Trust and Schroeder Manatee Ranch, Inc., rezone Indigo Subdivision, a rezone of approximately 49.32 acres for a total of 200 acres from general agriculture to planned development residential on the east side of White Eagle Boulevard and north side of 44th Avenue East.
Thank you very much. Have there been any ex parte communications regarding this matter? Seeing none for the record. Introduction by staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and other members of the Planning Commission. I am Stephanie Moreland, and I have been sworn. This morning, the applicant is here, and she's going to come forward, Ms. Katie Labar. She's here representing the applicant. She's going to come forward and give her presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Moreland.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. I am Katie Labar with Stantec, representing Neal Communities of Southwest Florida, and I have been sworn. Rather than give a complete presentation, I'd really like to spend some time focusing on Mr. Bauer's questions and be available to answer any additional questions that staff may have. As was indicated when the item was read into the record, the request before you today is a rezone of 49.32 acres from general agriculture to planned development residential. With that rezone, we are requesting an additional 137 residential units. The intent is to incorporate that property into the overall Indigo subdivision, and that is why we brought forward a new preliminary site plan showing how that property is integrated into the community of Indigo. The total dwelling unit count for Indigo would now be 590 dwelling units on 200.64 acres. That represents a density of 2.94 dwelling units. Just to give you a little bit of history, Indigo really started as a 40-acre property located at the intersection of 44th Avenue East and White Eagle Boulevard. That was approved, it was 40.21 acres, and we obtained an approval, a planned development residential approval for 120 units in 2014. Subsequent to that approval, there was an opportunity to acquire some land from Schrader Manatee Ranch. It made sense to incorporate that land into Indigo, or into Riker at that time. And so through negotiations between our client, Neal Communities, and Schrader Manatee Ranch, Mr. Neal was able to acquire that land, and we were able to land plan it accordingly and incorporated that into the overall subdivision. So we brought forward an application, preliminary site plan, rezoning 111 acres, requesting 333 additional dwelling units, which represented a total of 453 dwelling units in February of 2015. So right at a year ago, we came forward. At that time, the density was 2.99 dwelling units per acre. This request, again, is for 49.32 acres, adding 137 additional units for a total of 590 at a density of 2.94. So you will see that we've stayed at very close to the maximum potential density permitted under the UF3 future land use category. With this addition, we are slightly reducing the density, actually, and so the overall density, again, will be 2.94 dwelling units per acre. I have an exhibit that we prepared just to kind of give you a sense of what's been approved in this region between State Road 64 and 44th Avenue East, and just to sort of give you a sense of where we are and why we think that this density is really appropriate at this location. Again, all of the property is in the underlying all of our property is in UF3 future land use category. This area has a mix of IL, MUC, and other various land use categories, but predominantly UF3, which again allows for a maximum density of 3 dwelling units per acre. Eagle Trace was approved in 2013. It's located right in this location at 2.66 DUs per acre. Arbor Grand and Mallory Park are both part of the Lakewood Center DRI. They have, just for their developments, densities of 2.66, 2.4 to 2.6 dwelling units per acre. Harmony, which is located generally in this location, has a density of 2.88 DUs per acre. And so you'll see that this area of the county is developing in accord with the comprehensive plan, and we believe that the moderate scale density that is actually being developed is appropriate. It's necessary in order to support the grand vision for Lakewood Center as being a major employment center and major commercial center. And so for those reasons, we've requested the density. We think that it's appropriate. We certainly request your recommendation of approval, and we're available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Labar. The next item would typically be a staff presentation. Does the board request a staff presentation? Okay.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the public portion, the public comment portion of the hearing. And Ms. Catherine Edwards, if you would please step forward, state your name and that you have been sworn. And you'll have 3 minutes to make a statement.
Catherine Edwards, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
Just some comments on the development in general. There's a communication tower adjacent to Lake 12, and the nighttime lighting on that communication tower might need to be changed. White flashing strobe lights can be distracting to any future residents that may be there. On roads J and M, there's an area where there's some wetlands that are isolated by a lake on one side and development on the other. There are a lot of man-made lakes in this development, and they're surrounded by lots and housing. This is going to be, with the fertilizers and stuff on the lots, this has a potential for algae ponds, and maybe a little bit early, but there ought to be some provision for aeration of the lakes, if nothing else. If the lakes were made contiguous instead of being isolated, I think that would help and enhance the recreational value for the residents. 44th Avenue East, the future 44th Avenue East is going to be a major corridor at some point in time. And the construction of walls on both sides of the corridor are going to make it an unpleasant experience for any pedestrians walking along the 44th corridor in terms of carbon monoxide exhaust fumes. There ought to be some provision in the plan to help alleviate the accumulation of carbon monoxide in these corridors. In summary, contiguous wetlands and contiguous lakes would go a long way towards permitting reducing the contact between animals and humans in the area and improve the living environment for the future residents. Underground utilities would go a long way towards improving the aesthetics, and there's no current street lighting plan for such a large development. I think that would be a given. And I would like to remind this committee that the lowest common denominator doesn't always have to be the answer in terms of these developments. They're already being clear-cut as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time. Okay, are there any additional comments, public comments for item number 6? Anyone? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. Staff closing comments. Mr. Gerstenberger, is there anything that is done or proposed to be done for this project that's not typical or a special request with regard to the stormwater management?
For the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department, have been Well, I'll start over again. For the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department, and I have been sworn. With respect to the Indigo project, and basically since day one, which I'm referring to the initial preliminary site plan for the initial, I believe it was 40 acres for the Riker tract. There has been stormwater conditions with respect to reduction in the allowable runoff rate and also with respect to floodplain mitigation. There has been at least, I want to say, 2, maybe 3 different phases that have been submitted as far as construction plans. And those particular construction plans have included watershed analysis of the particular watershed for this area, which happens to be Mill Creek, to demonstrate that there is no adverse impacts created by the proposed development. I would add that it is very typical for projects of this sort to utilize the stormwater facilities for multiple purposes, including stormwater, including for available fill source for the grading of the subdivision. And it also brings up, with respect to fertilizer application, that the county does have a fertilizer ordinance, and fertilizer application is prohibited during the rainy season or during the summer months.
Thank you. And with regard to interconnectivity, I see that there are interconnections between lakes. Is it staff's opinion that it's sufficient interconnects for the stormwater system to likely operate as designed?
Mr. Chair, it is very typical for there to be interconnection between the upland areas down to the lower portions of the particular projects. In this case, the lay of the land is basically from southwest to the northeast towards Mill Creek. So the preliminary site plan does identify intent for there to be interconnections between those stormwater facilities.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions for staff? No? Okay. I do have one additional question. There was a comment made regarding interconnectivity, and just looking at the plan, I do see interconnectivity between some of the wetlands. I know some of them are isolated, where it's a little more difficult, but even those wetlands, it seems to me, by looking at the plan, there seems to be some interconnectivity. Mr. Christian, could you speak to that matter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Joel Christian, for the record, I've been sworn. There are some isolated wetlands. They are, abutted up against stormwater systems. Typically, that's done so that you can maintain the hydrology of those wetlands, have outfalls into those wetlands. There are a couple of crossings of linear systems. Those typically are culverted, so they maintain a connection. They're not severed completely, so water can flow through those and maintain its historic flow.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Okay. Seeing none, applicant, closing comments? You're good? Thank you. All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Chairman,
Mr. Rhodes.
make a recommended motion based on the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and the finding the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and the Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein. I move to recommend adoption of the Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDR 15-15, para Z, para P, approval of the preliminary site plan with stipulations A.1 through A.6, B1 through B3, C1, D1 through D8, and E1. Granting special approval for our project. Item 1, exceeding a gross density of 1 dwelling unit per acre in the UF-3 and the MUCR future land use categories. Number 2, exceeding a net density of 3 dwellings per unit in a UF3 and MUCR. And item 3, adjacent to a perennial stream as recommended by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Delesline, we have a motion and a second. Are there any, is there any discussion? Seeing none, the chair will call the motion to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Again, passes unanimous. Okay, we're closing the public hearing for item number 6, and we're going to open it for item number 5. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Item number 5, Ms. Knapp, if you would, please read this item into the record.
Thank you. PDMU 1508P, American Monument Bank, Westport, a preliminary site plan for a 158-lot single-family subdivision on approximately 43 acres, located on the south side of State Road 70, on the east and west sides of 37th Street East, north of 39th Street East, and commonly known as 5510 39th Street East.
Thank you, Ms. Knapp. Again, on this item, have there been any ex parte communications that need to be disclosed? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to the introduction by staff. Ms. Tusing, if you would, please introduce the project.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Margaret Tusing with Building and Development Services, and I have been sworn. Ms. Knapp did introduce the project. I do want to point out that I do have an additional stipulation that needs to be added regarding the affordable housing stock loss mitigation. There are 4 structures located on the property. Our neighborhood services staff have gone out and reviewed them. 2 of them appear to be within the affordable housing stock, so between now and the demolition permit, it is required that the dollar amount be determined and payment made to the Housing Trust Fund. So I'm going to hand that out along with the amended motion.
Okay, has the applicant received that previously?
Yes, I gave it to him today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I guess one question, are we going to do a full presentation on this project or just respond to specific questions?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bauer, you requested this item be withdrawn from consent. What are your concerns?
There's a few concerns, but I think considering the number of people here today, a full presentation would probably be a good idea.
Okay. Mr. New is available for questions and answers with the applicant, and they'll do their presentation now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dusing.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Don New, agent for the project, and I have been sworn. We've got a lot of stuff to get through, so in the interest of time, I'll just jump right into it if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Westport Residential Subdivision. Our project team, we have our whole project team here with us. Of course, we have our developer and eco and transportation engineers, Camille Crawford, civil engineer, and I've been serving as the agent, and they're all here to answer questions or additional questions if you have them. Here's the location site between east of 301 and west of 75. It is a true infill site on the south side of 70 at 37th. There's a little aerial that shows how it overlays on the existing site. It's been used for horse training and storage as of late, and some vacant residences are on there. That's 37th that you see that bifurcates it a little bit. And here's the overlaid site plan on it. The site plan has evolved over the last 6 months, so we've been working on this, a few less lots, but it is just a kind of a typical residential subdivision with a little neo-traditional area there that you see. So a little history on the site. In 2008, it was rezoned to PDMU with a little more intense site plan. It had 91 residents on it, 81 single families, 10 attached, semi-detached, and 210 bed assisted living facility, and 89,100 square feet of commercial office was approved on the site. We're proposing just straight residential, so less than 10. So what are we asking for? We're not asking for the zoning change. In our preliminary meetings with the county, the PDMU fits us, so we just changed to a less of a preliminary site plan, less dense. Here's the zoning designations, as you'd think, pretty typical for an area like this, transitioning. This is the PDMU. We have some commercial up here on 70 and some residential transfers into residential to our south. You have church. So pretty standard use, you would think, on the south, close to an arterial road like that. You have church, some medical office professional on the north, south. We have our Garden Lakes neighbors, who I think you'll hear from a little bit later today, and just some. So it's kind of a mixed-use area. And west is the single family. Future land use, same way. This is the Res 6, so just pretty typical. One thing we always look at is development trends in the area and some of the things, if we're compatible. And as you would expect in a Res 6 area, it runs from the 2.8 up to almost 6 units an acre. When we do these analysis of what's been approved around it, so we're right in the middle there. We'll be about 4 units an acre. I'll show you a little later. Same thing on the recently approved projects. As we always go through this exercise, hasn't been a whole lot of activity. I would expect some more of these parcels up here on 70 to be coming in redevelopment. But here's some of the projects that have been approved over the last few years. The church next to us, and then some of it is a little older. And here's our proposed preliminary site plan. Strictly residential subdivision, 3 access points on 37th, that I'm going to get in a little more detail on, our little neo-traditional enclave here, and 1 access on 39th. I can say that this as I said, this plan has evolved over the last few months. We've got a few less lots, and we slid these accesses to make sure they were in the optimal spots. So we have our 158 units in total, 2 different lot sizes to give a little diversity inside of our project, and a self-contained recreational area. I want to put this up because this is a little unusual that we have our well, no, we're right in the middle. This is right at 4 units an acre. This just shows the gross density and the net density, so it's 4 units an acre, right in the middle of for a Res 6. This is what I was thinking of. This open space, we have, our open space is 40%, and it's consistent, and with we're over the required amount. We only allow, required 30%, but the upland preserves is 4.37. We don't have a whole lot of environmental features on this site. It's kind of unusual to have 53% of our open space as upland preserves. It's a good thing. We don't use it all with lakes and other protected habitat. So it's kind of unusual. So 53% of our 25% of our open space total is upland preserves. Here's a land use comparison compared to what is approved on that site today and the other site plan that I mentioned. And this is just to demonstrate that we're a lot less intense. With the 91 units and the 189,100 square feet of commercial office, that generates 337 gross PM peak hour trips. You know how we always count traffic. And hours, this was done on a previous plan, but I let it stand to be more conservative, 162 units that we started out with. That only generates 161 units. So we're less than half the impact when it comes to what they could build out there today without coming to see you again. So we have over 40% open space, and we do have a self-contained recreational facility. And here's our three access points. We have Court A, the ones people have been talking about, the Court A, Court B, Court C on 37th, that I want to get in a little more detail, and then just one on 39th. I don't think there's much discussion about that one. This is the one on the north side that serves the lots on the west side coming in. That's 70 up there in the picture here. So I'm standing right in the middle of this intersection, looking north and then looking south. And what we had to produce, we slid these accesses around. Our engineers worked with the county engineering folks and transportation folks and went out and slid these driveways around to make sure they were located in the optimal spot. So they meet the site distance triangles, and these exhibits show that, what we had to turn in. Here's the southern access that just serves those little 4 lots down here. Again, looking north, looking south, and demonstration that it meets the site distance and the study that we did. Same way, this is the main entranceway off of 37th, and again, looking north on the right, up, and standing in the middle of it, and the south to the left here. So I just put these in there to show that we moved these, to put them in the optimal spot. We had to move these quite a bit. We thought it was going to be a different area, actually, until we actually got into the studies and then worked with the county to make sure they were located properly. So master drainage, I know people always worry about drainage too, and it's an item discussion. I just say, what I usually say is that by the time we get done with SwiftMud and all the county requirements, we have to make sure we have no adverse impacts upstream and downstream. We build all these lakes for the retention area and then let it out at a prescribed rate, and we truly have no adverse impacts. It's just, I know it's counterintuitive sometimes, but by the time we're done designing these things, they drain better, and the water quality leaving them is much better. It's just an engineering fact these days. Then with our buffers, have buffers all around, and our buffers exceed the requirement, the code requirement. Most of the code are 10 and 15 feet, our minimum of 20. We have type A and type C buffers, some of them with a berm and planting, so our buffers exceed the minimum requirement. So the goal of this development when we started was always to make efficient use of the land. It is a true infill development, preserve the natural habitats. We don't have a lot of wetlands and stuff, but we're preserving the uplands, and implement the comprehensive plan. We think we've done that. The parcel is currently just a non-performing parcel, sitting out there on the tax base and job creation perspective. It is ripe for development. It is an infill project. The site is suitable for our proposed use. There's no wetlands impacted on the site. Upland habitats will be preserved, a tree preservation plan in place to replace any trees that have to be removed. There's no evidence of any listed species or any endangered species on the site, and our landscaping and buffers exceed our minimums. This project is a true infill development. but I think it's a modest use for this property, but we did that because we think the proposed residential use are more compatible with the neighborhood. We're consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. We have adequate infrastructure to support the project. Levels of service are maintained, and the applicant agrees with the proposed stipulations. And with that, I wanted to add one other thing. Talking to our neighbors to the south, I do want to add a stipulation, and we probably should have done this before, but these 4 little lots down here that abut pretty closely to the Garden Lakes folks pool, they have requested a fence there, and we should have put one there to begin with, and we will. And we'll write it into another stipulation and put it on the PSP before we get to the board, if that's okay with you.
Mr. New, you said 4 lots?
Yeah, there's 5.
Okay.
Before the, but the pool there, I think
Okay.
what they were, but we'll put it along our residential area there.
Along the entire southern border of that particular,
Well, I don't think we want to get into that open space there. We'll stop it at the end of the lots.
okay. Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Okay, and that's it, and have our experts here to answer any questions you might have, but I wanted to add that, and we'll craft that stipulation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a few, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bauer?
What's the speed limit on 37th Street?
I believe it's 35 miles an hour. 30.
Can you bring up that last slide again of the site plan, please? So I think it's B and C on 37th, those 2 entryways
Yes.
that are pretty close to each other.
Here and here.
I believe, and we'll hear from the citizens a little bit later, but I'm guessing that area right there is one of their primary concerns, and especially from a safety aspect. I mean, the reality is it's 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, but if you lived here long enough in Bradenton, you know that people don't ride 30 mile an hour on that road especially. So for future down the road, I'm just visioning down the road. Let me back up. You talked about what the plan is approved for today
Correct.
and what you could do if you wanted to without any changes by this board or other. Is that correct?
That's right.
So from a plan perspective, I think it's potentially certainly better. But from a safety aspect, what I'm envisioning is you build this out, people move in, they realize potentially some safety concerns, but kind of dismiss it. And then later down the road, the commissioners here, this has become unsafe, we need stop signs, we need this, we need that. Especially because of the speed limit and how people drive on this road. They don't drive at the speed limit. So then you get more concerns about safety, officers, all these other things. So I know we'll hear, so I just want to get your comments in terms of, I can't really see this picture real well in terms of the view of traffic coming in and out of,
Right.
I think it's Road B or Court B, I think is the main, because the other one only has 5 homes,
Yes.
right?
That's right.
So the main concern is the biggest development coming out, portion of the
That's right.
development coming out to the road.
Yeah, and part of our analysis, and I'll have our traffic engineer speak to it better than I can, but part of our analysis on the safety and operation, and your staff can address this too, is that we have to put in the turn lanes and things also. I didn't really mention that with the turn lanes that we have to build and widen out this roadway to come into compliance with the comprehensive plan. So we have associated turn lanes, and they all meet, you have to follow the FDOT standards and the land development regulation standards, and that's what I was trying to show here, that the turn lane distances are all calculated by the calculations of the road, of the generated traffic, and they're allowed for in the future too. Like out at 70, our turn lanes are actually calculated for the build out in the future.
Okay.
I don't know if you'd like to, good night.
Good morning. For the record, Richard Matthews with Vibe Engineering, and I have been sworn. Just to supplement what Don said a little bit, these driveways were designed in order to optimize a couple of considerations: the site distance, both for inbound vehicles and outbound vehicles from the site at each location. And then the driveway spacing was also optimized relative to the proposed site layout to make sure the corresponding driveways were adequately spaced, also for turn lanes. As Don mentioned, a left turn lane was warranted at the centermost driveway, and that's really where you're going to see the majority of the traffic activity there. And we've provided a left turn lane to draw people off the main line road so it doesn't disrupt people traveling through that location. And then as far as the safety concerns, that southernmost driveway, it's important to note, is only going to accommodate 5 units. So during peak hour conditions, you would expect to see maybe 4 trips at the most. So that's about, 1 trip every 20 minutes or so during the peak hour. So it's not going to be a heavy influx of vehicles during that time. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers that. If you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
I have one additional question. What was the trip distribution for these neighborhoods? Was the presumption the majority of the trips would be going towards 70?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And that's a good point to mention. We're projecting about 60% of the traffic, a little over 60%, coming from the north, and the western portions coming from Bradenton. So the majority of the trips that you're going to see coming inbound are going to be coming from the north rather than passing by the subdivisions there to the south.
Okay, because the safety concern that Commissioner Bauer mentioned, I would presume that the traffic would be flowing to 70, so the new neighborhoods are going to be passing the entrances for their fellow residents in the new neighborhood, but I don't see this traffic is passing the existing neighborhood entrances very frequently. It seems, I'm sure the good citizens that live in that neighborhood wouldn't be excessively speeding down that area. I'm a little confused by the concern. It seems like it's seemed a little bit backwards that the neighborhoods closer to 70 would have more of a concern than the neighborhoods further into the area.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make. Just to give you a rough idea of the magnitude of trips passing by the Garden Lake subdivision to the south, we're projecting about 11 northbound trips during the PM peak hour. So it's not a heavy volume at all. So we don't anticipate any safety concerns as a result of that. And again, in terms of safety, the site distance criteria is really the primary consideration, and we've designed those to accommodate, I think, a design speed of 35, so over the posted speed of 30. So we're pretty well covered in that respect.
Okay, Mr. Rutledge, you had a comment?
So tell me the transitional difference between trips for the office component that is available versus the residential. So tell me how much you thought the trips would allocate for 80,000 feet of office space if we're coming in that same entrance versus converting that to whatever you did for residential.
We haven't really done any detailed analysis for the office. What we can tell you from kind of an overall distribution aspect is, the overall magnitude of trips is double for the office what it would be for what we're proposing for the residential portion.
And wouldn't the intersection be much more intense for the office? I mean, I guess that's kind of interesting to me. Is in other words, we're talking about the residential, but there's 80,000 feet of office, and if they have 40 tenants or whatever that is, that traffic count, and I think that'd be an interesting number to know. I'm surprised you guys didn't take that differential. Nobody.
I think they presented the overall differential. I think what Mr. Matthews is testifying to, he didn't do a detailed analysis.
Okay, sorry.
We didn't do the distribution, we know what the gross trips are generating.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
And we would anticipate something pretty similar as far as distribution. It would be similar for both the residential and office cases, but it would essentially be double the magnitude for the office.
Okay, that was fine. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments of the applicant?
Not right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Tusing, if you would.
Good morning, Margaret Tusing with Building and Development Services. Can I have the PowerPoint? Yes, excuse me. Oh, it doesn't want to go backwards. Okay, the project is for, as been stated, 158 single-family homes on approximately 44 lots. There are 2 lot sizes and 2 different types of housing styles. Special approvals are required because the project is adjacent to a perennial stream, Pierce Drain, Gap Creek. And the requirement for that is that there was extra treatment for runoff to protect the water quality of the creek. And Mr. Gerstenberger will go into more details regarding what we require for parcels adjacent to a perennial stream. And the second special approval is for habitable structures within the 25-year floodplain. And the requirements that those structures would have to meet would that the lots are required to be graded outside of the 25-year floodplain. The floodplain needs to be mitigated, and the finished floor needs to be 1 foot above the 100-year floodplain elevation. This project does propose 40% open space when 30% is required. As Mr. New had mentioned, this project does propose to have a new urbanism type of project located in the eastern portion of the project site, and it's approximately 36 units. And then the detailed look is there on the bottom left-hand or bottom right corner. And what this project will do is the lots will be on Road G and Road H. The access to the garages will be from the rear, and then they will share a common space in the middle and also the common sidewalk. So the sidewalks will be located within the internally instead of on the roadways. The future land use of the property is Res 9 and Res 6. Just a portion, which the Res 9 is located just south of State Road 70, where no development will be taking place. That is an open space area. The gross density is 3.61, and the net density is 4.01. The original zoning, as was discussed, was PDMU, and it was approved in December of 2008. It was for 81 single-family homes and 10 single-family semi-detached, a 210-bed ALF, and an 89,100 square foot office. Looking at the comprehensive plan consistency, the policies that we look at are compatibility and appropriate timing, which is policy 2127. The existing development patterns in the area, it is single-family uses with densities ranging from 2.8 to 5.7 dwelling units gross acres. Westport is 3.61. The types of land uses within the area, there are residential uses, residential support uses, which include churches and the post office, and also commercial uses adjacent to State Road 70 and also on 39th Street East. There are adequate public facilities in the area. There is potable water and sanitary sewer available either by connection or by extension. And this project also limits urban sprawl by being an infill project, developing where existing infrastructure exists and existing development. Additional comprehensive plan consistency is to limit urban sprawl, which is policy 2124. Westport is an infill project. Developing strong communities, connection and integration of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular systems. The project proposes to have sidewalks internally on both sides of the street, as well as adding the sidewalks adjacent to 39th and 37th, which was requested by the school board, and the developer is meeting those requests. They also provide a variety of housing stock. They have the single-family detached and then the smaller new urbanism type homes, which are also detached residential structures. They have a connection to recreational facilities, employment opportunities, and commercial uses. As we stated, there is, commercial projects within very close proximity to this development. Again, there's appropriate variety of appropriate dwelling unit types and sizes. The positive aspects of the project are that it is infill development. When you look at the aerial, you can see that this is one of the few parcels of land that is left in this area. It's developed, pretty heavily with residential uses on the south side of State Road 70, with more commercial and office uses located on State Road 70. Both the north and south side of 70 are developed. And it also has compatible housing type and density. And I'm available if you have any additional questions, and Mr. Gerstenberger also has a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from Ms. Dusing? All right,
Just one.
Mr. Rutledge.
I'm just curious, because of where it's located and the commercial that's around there, you said it's designed for this vehicular system, bikes, walkability, and so forth. Can you describe that a little more specifically? Because, I mean, obviously, one of the things with that density, it'd be great to know that people could ride their bikes to the services there and kind of takes them off the road. Is there more detail to that, or no?
Well, I mean, just that they are providing sidewalks, and they do have the ability. 39th does not currently have sidewalks anywhere located along and it doesn't have the bike lanes, but it would be possible to go up to, there's a Publix and, Paley Place is right there on 39th and.
Sidewalk from there, on their bike, for example, up there, go
Right.
down on 70, because it's got walks there, right?
Yes, there are sidewalks on 70, so you would be able to connect to the uses that are there.
So the urban housing concept has some merit because it has some services there. It's not just a bunch of little houses stuck together. It has some
Correct.
merit. Thanks.
With
Welcome.
regard to 37th, I thought I saw on the plans where there was future right-of-ways set aside. Is that,
Yes,
and currently, I believe the right-of-way was maybe 66 feet, and the future potentially could be 100-foot right-of-way?
I think Mr. Davis will help me out on that.
Thank you. For the record, Clark Davis, Transportation Planning Division Manager, and I have been sworn. On the future thoroughfare plan, this is shown as a 4-lane urban arterial roadway, which would regularly require up to 120 feet of right-of-way. We worked with the applicant to place some of the future drainage and utility areas in easements, and so they're reserving on their, or showing on their plan reservation of a future right-of-way setback that would bring it, I believe it's to 100 feet for the travelway.
And that future roadway would be constructed by the county when necessary, when it's deemed necessary.
Based on what we know today, it would be an undertaking by the county when the capacity is needed. If other development occurred in the area and the need was created by them, they might participate as well. The need is not driven by this proposed development, however.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, any additional questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I believe Mr. Gerstenberger is pulling up his PowerPoint presentation. Guess we'll go to a commercial while we wait.
Sponsored by?
It's stormwater. It's going to be worth waiting for. It's going to be exciting, I'm sure. One of my favorite things.
Okay. Sorry about that little delay.
Not a problem.
Yeah, that looks better, actually. For the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department, and again, for the record, I have been sworn. I'm going to go through a brief presentation with regards to stormwater for not only this project, but for the watershed as a whole. and start with the Westport project is located within the Gap Creek Pierce Drain watershed. The main leg of this watershed runs through this project that was identified by the site plan that was provided by the applicant and also by the case manager. Pierce Drain itself originated from a state-enacted drainage district in 1920, which was later abolished in 1945. The drainage canal serves as a connection between Gap Creek to the north and Whitaker Bayou in Sarasota County to the south. Gap Creek drains into the Braden River, whereas Whitaker Bayou drains into Sarasota Bay. This exhibit here happens to be the cover page of a drainage district index that was created by the Department of Agriculture that is included in the state, that is provided by the state. This exhibit here is a 1958 aerial of the general vicinity of the project. I outlined the streets in reference, which would be from State Road 70 down to 63rd Avenue East, and then also the east-west boundaries of 33rd Street East and 39th Street East. And as this aerial map shows, the drainage canal back during the 1950s and also the agriculture uses at the time. As previously stated, the main leg of Pierce Drain, Gap Creek, runs through this project. There are also two tributaries which feed into the main leg, one from the west, which happens to be Collins Dairy Drain, and one from the north, which is Manti Oaks tributary. The proposed project is partially located within the 2014 edition of the FEMA flood insurance rate maps, 100-year floodplain and 100-year floodway. Elevations are shown on the presentation. And this project is also partially located within the 25-year floodplain. Gap Creek and Pierce Drain watersheds are among those watersheds in the county that are identified as flood-prone areas. This map exhibit here identifies the drainage systems within the Westport project and the surrounding area. Just to identify with the cursor, the main leg is running from south to the northeast through the project, and then also there is the western tributary, which was previously identified as Collins Dairy Drain, and also the northern tributary, which is coming from Manti Oaks subdivision, and also has a culvert crossing adjacent to the project under State Road 70. With respect to county maintenance, the county continuously maintains the drainage canal and tributaries located within this project and areas to the south and north. The primary emphasis of maintenance activities is to maintain the free flow of drainage. Manatee County maintenance activities include mowing, herbicide application, mechanical trimming and cleaning, and routine inspection. With respect to this particular project, the staff report includes stipulations C1 through C3 with respect to no adverse drainage impacts, floodplain mitigation, and dedication of drainage easements. This project will also be required to provide a no-rise permit for any impacts, i.e. fill or construction of bridges within the FEMA floodway. And at this time, I'll be happy to address any further questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Gerstenberger?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bauer?
can you go back to the screen that showed?
Say one.
There you go. So which way does it drain from here? Does it go in different directions depending on where you're at because it goes north and south?
The drainage within this particular area is draining from the south towards the northeast.
Towards the Braden River?
Correct, yes.
You said there's no impacts? one of your last screens said there's no impacts in terms of the drainage?
The stipulations that are included in the staff report require that this project demonstrate that no adverse drainage impacts are created by the proposed development.
How do they accomplish that if this runs right through the development?
The project would be required at final site plan and construction plan stage to provide the plans, design details, and drainage modeling necessary to demonstrate no adverse impact.
Okay.
Mr. Gerstenberger, this is not this particular project, but the requirement to provide no adverse impacts, that's required by state rule and regulation, is it not?
Correct, Mr. Chair. That is a requirement not only of the county, but also of Southwest Florida Water Management District. Any project within this watershed, which there has been numerous projects as of late, University Village, Fiddler's Creek, for example, all those projects were required at time of final site plan, construction plan, through drainage modeling to demonstrate that they would create no adverse impacts to neighboring properties.
And maybe you could speak to how that's accomplished, or maybe the applicant went in rebuttal, but the modeling that's presented, that's the same modeling that was utilized to determine the FEMA elevations, is that correct? Or
Mr. Chair, in this particular case, there is and Mike going off into the engineering deep hole, but.
I'll go with you.
All right. For this particular area, there is an established FEMA floodway pursuant to HEC 2 modeling, and there is also an independent study that was prepared previously for, I believe it was University Groves and at the time Stonebriar. Today it's called Cascades at Sarasota Project. That particular study was independently done by Tom Schutman. And that particular study has been utilized by other projects within Pierce Drain, basically reran numbers, things of that sort for particular projects to demonstrate the no adverse impact condition. I'd also add there is particular projects within the floodway that have also provided letter of map revisions to FEMA to amend the map panels as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any additional questions for Mr. Gerstenberg and Mr. Rutledge?
So you detailed kind of the expense of what the county does in this area. When this development is completed, how are those impacted, positively or negatively?
With respect to maintenance, sir, or?
You detailed the maintenance, the herbicides, the cleaning, all that. So when this occurs with this surrounding development, what's the impact to the county, all the rest of the taxpayers for them putting this in? Positive or negative?
With respect to this particular project, there is condition C3, which requires the applicant to dedicate a drainage easement and also a maintenance access easement for the county to continue maintenance along Pierce Drain and also the tributary systems.
So, Mr. Gerstenberger, for clarification, the county currently maintains these waterways and canals, correct?
That is correct, sir. There is actually one of my staff members who's heavily involved in this particular area as far as recon and as far as also coordinating with operations staff. There was a grand total of 52 work orders that have been completed on this particular portion of Pierce Drain in the past 5 years.
So the fact that there's going to be a residential subdivision doesn't increase the need for maintenance?
No, sir. What the county would maintain would be the legs, the main leg and the tributary systems of Pierce Drain. It would not include the actual physical internal stormwater facilities associated with the proposed development.
And you mentioned that they're required to provide easements, so they're granting rights that the county did not previously have?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any additional questions?
I just had one other one.
Mr. Rutledge.
So you said that these are set up with standards that require them to have this water quality, and that's the standard we use now because everything gets better. Do you have historical documents that say that what we've done in the past has been successful in improving the water quality when we have these, like everybody comes up and says it's going to be better?
For the record, that wasn't Mr. Gerstenberg who made that statement, that was Mr. Neal.
Well, I was curious what he thought about his statement.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rutledge, one thing to point out, there is a difference between water quality and the water quantity component. With respect to the special approval request for perennial stream, this particular project does provide stormwater facilities to address water quality requirements pursuant to county and SWIFMUD. With respect to water quantity would be the attenuation, storage of runoff, and also floodplain mitigation. Does that answer your question?
It does, and my question really was a little broader than that and saying, in our history of your approving these and looking at them later, is water quality and the design been adequate to say that it's better, generally, your opinion?
With respect to water quantity, well, my end of the table handles more the quantity side of things than quality. Quality is more of a natural resource component. That would be associated with our National Pollutant Discharge and Elimination System, NPDES permit. And that is a routine recertification of stormwater facilities throughout the county. That permit recertification has to demonstrate that there is no water quality, no additional water quality impacts to the drainage systems within Manatee County. When we speak of water quantity, when we speak of attenuation and floodplain mitigation, not this particular watershed, Pierce Drain, but other watersheds throughout the county, which would be Buffalo Canal, Frog Creek, Gamble Creek, and the Braden River. The cooperative watershed studies that have taken place in the recent years have identified that the efforts and the requirements through the development projects, whether they be flow reduction or floodplain mitigation, are having a positive impact.
Okay. Sorry for the broad question. Very helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Gerstenberger, one follow-up question. This project's required to provide 150% treatment?
No, sir.
It's not, but it's
not.
100% treatment. And that criteria is set by the state, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Typically, Mr. Chair, that would be for wet pond systems, wet detention, wet retention pond systems. That would be the water quality volume for 1 inch of rainfall over the entire project.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else for Mr. Gerstenberger? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gerstenberger. All right, we're going to move to the public comment portion of the hearing. I've got several folks signed up to speak, so when I call your name, if you would, please step forward, state your name, and that you have been sworn. The first card I have is Mr. Ronnie Grubbs. If you would, please step forward, state your name, and that you have been sworn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ronnie Grubbs. And board, yes.
And
I have a home,
and
7 Port.
And you've been sworn, Mr. Grubbs?
I've been sworn.
Thank you very much.
And I have a home in 7.3 acres that's adjacent to the development on the east side, down 36th Street. And I'd just like to make a couple comments. I've really enjoyed the presentation today. I've learned a lot. It means a lot to me, Don. You did a good job. And this last gentleman up here. I understand it's going to be straight residential. I think that's an improvement. And I understand you're going to, is it three entrances access on 37th, one on 39th, none on 36th? Good. That was important to me. But I would, you're going to grant these dear folks here, my neighbors, a fence there along them 4 lots. I sure would appreciate if you'd give serious thought putting some kind of a fence along 36th Street where you're developing. I've got a lot of land there and I got never mentioned it by name. Onika Drainage runs through my property. He might have meant, I think he said Collins Drain, but it runs into Pierce just over in the development. But there's a lot of water there, and I'd hate for some child to get over there and get in trouble. So y'all consider putting a fence up there other than just a berm or something, I'd appreciate it. I think it's just for safety. And the 40% open space that you referenced, I just wonder what is that going to be? Is that going to be a recreational area, just beautiful land left there undeveloped or developed pretty, or 40% is a lot of space out of that 42 acres or 52 acres. And so how's that going to be? I'm just curious, what are you going to do with that? Is that just going to be open space, undeveloped?
Mr. Grubbs, I'm sure they'll have an opportunity to provide you answers
That's
to your
just strictly
questions.
I was curious if it's going to do anything with it, or if it's just going to be laying there dormant like it is now. But coming down 36th Street, we got a beautiful canopy of oak trees. Part of it's on my property, part of it's going to be on developed property, Westport. What y'all going to call that subdivision anyway? Do anybody know yet what you're going to call it?
Mr. Grubbs, if you could direct the comments to the board, so mainly so they can be picked up by the microphone.
Right.
So, county clerk,
Do
clerk's office.
you know? Do they know what they're going to call it?
Again, you can ask your questions, and during rebuttal,
Okay.
they'll answer. It's
I'm
not a
just- I'm just
dialogue back and
curious.
forth.
Nice to be able to reference what's going in there if somebody asks me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Are there any other?
I think that'll do it. I appreciate all the master drainage effort that you're putting into it, and y'all have done a great job today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grubbs. Thank you. Next up is Mr. John Westberg. Again, if you would, please step up, state your name, and that you've been sworn.
I might say I filled out the form.
Yes, sir. If you would, please step up to the,
I filled out, my name is John Westberg, and resident of Garden Lakes.
and you've been sworn?
I filled out the form, and then I thought, I'm not going to need to say anything because we're covering things here. But as I listened to what was said, I had a question.
Okay, and.
I don't know if I can ask
so
a question.
The question is, have you been sworn?
And I have not, I did not swear in.
Okay,
So,
so prior to your comments, we need to swear you in. So if there's anybody else in the audience who needs to be sworn in, if they've changed their mind about speaking, if you would, please rise to be sworn in. Okay, you've got some company, so.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to this board will be truthful and accurate?
I do.
All right, thank you, Mr. Westberg.
Okay, thank you. As the presentation was made here this morning, there was mention of new urbanism housing. It's a new term I hadn't heard before. And that whole area, there are Garden Lakes where I live, and then the other surrounding communities are really nice. I mean, the homes are fairly expensive, and it's a nice area. And my concern is this new urbanism, whatever that is, I'd like the definition, but my concern is what level of income is this whole area aimed for? And some of the homes may even be lower income area, and could any of it be Section 508 housing oriented? In other words, if we can, our concern is that we keep that area fairly decent income and not lower income area where we have a lot of people coming in and out, and then, you know, trash and all kinds of violence, and the whole area of homes, Peridia, all that area is really good. And we're just concerned that we maintain that in terms of, you know, as homes get cheaper in price, we start getting a different class of people. And that's a concern we have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And again, you can make your statement, and the applicant, when appropriate, will provide answers. So, thank you, Mr. Westberg. The next person I have that has signed up to speak on this matter is Anita Dimon, and I was presented with a letter stating that she is speaking on behalf of the, Garden Lakes Community Association. So, Ms. Dimon will have. I'm sorry, Diamond. We'll have 10 minutes if necessary. Don't feel compelled to use the whole time if it's not.
Everybody wants to go to lunch.
Thank you. And again, if you would, please state your name and that you have been sworn.
My name is Annette Diamond, and I have been sworn. I'm the president of Garden Lakes Community Association. Please excuse my voice. I've had some of this respiratory stuff that was been going around, but I think I'm on the way to being cured now. Just a couple of things that I did send a letter to the Board of Commissioners and also to the staff of the project. A couple of things that we're concerned with. In the prior approval, December 4th in 2008, there were a couple of things in there, one of which Mr. New has now addressed. A couple of things in there that we had talked to those developers about and had taken care of. In that proposal, the proposed expansion of 37th Street, which is on the county maps to be a 4-lane road in the future, that was moved and realigned through the prior development to straighten it out somewhat and to bring it more in a straight line down where it connects to 39th Street. And the current 37th Street was going to be left to be a local road. And there was a road that would go from our drive through to the new 4-lane 37th Street when it was done. And that was in there. And also what was specifically entered into that plan was the fact that the boundary between that project and our project was going to have a wall and a landscape berm erected. In the new project, there are no walls except there is a solid fence along the boundary, the east boundary with the church. I don't know who they're protecting there. That's a parking lot and nobody's there, but that's okay. So we would like to have that wall reinstated along with the landscape berm that's supposed to be with that, or landscape buffer. Sorry, I don't mean to use berm. Landscape buffer in the wall. The old project also had either a berm, 6-foot berm, and most of the projects, if you drive down from State Route 70, you drive down 37th, which connects to 39th, which then becomes Tuttle, you can go all the way to University. Every development has a wall, a solid fence, or a 6-foot berm with a fence on top of it. And I don't see why this one should be any different from that. One of the things is you want to keep with the items in the area. So we would like to have them rethink right now it's a 3-foot berm with landscaping. And next to our fence, which he just said he was going to correct, it was just landscaping, not even a berm. And we would like to have that wall reinstated from the other plan. The entrances, the concern we have is we're used to getting out on 37th, and it really is a chore sometimes because of the curve of the road. You know, you look up and then you look down this way and then you come back this way and there's another car coming. And if you miss that, you're going to get hit. You know, that's the only thing. And with their 3 entrances, and we have actually 4 entrances, so that makes 7 in like 4/10 of a mile. And so it is a concern to us because we are a 55-plus community, and we have to do that. The other thing with the traffic that we are concerned about is, when, in the current plan, when 37th Street is expanded to 4 lanes, where it currently is, we have our main driveway, but then we have 3 driveways that belong to our courtyard units, and there's 3 of them that come out onto the road. If any of that is taken back, they will not have sufficient visibility to see cars coming on, because you have to pull out into that driveway to look up the road and down the road to see what's coming out. So that's one of our concerns, leaving 37th where it is and making it a 4-lane road, because obviously they're going to have to come back somewhere unless they take it all off the other side, which I don't know what you guys can do about that. Okay. In the plan, they say that I guess it was staff that said, take your main entrance onto 39th Street and just leave 37th Street as a secondary entrance. But to be perfectly honest with you, because of the backup on 39th Street, people will use 37th Street entrance, obviously. They will do that. Okay. Let's see if there was another thing here I wanted to highlight. The Pierce Pierce Canal, Pierce Drain, Gap Creek, I don't know, and I hear you saying that you've been maintaining it. We have, and I have a whole bag back there, very well documented, with binders and everything showing how many times we've asked the county to come in and take care of in fact, we even deeded over to the county back, I have to look at the date on it. I can't remember it now, but back in 97, 98, somewhere around there, we actually deeded over to the county the west bank of the Pierce Drain, where we are. We are on the east bank, but we also own the west bank, and we actually deeded that to the county so they would have access to that. I walked the canal the other day. There are trees down, and the bank has been eroding. Some people have said that they've lost 7 to 8 feet of their yards. So, and to get the county to come in, and they say, oh, there's no problem, but there is a problem. So I just want to know, what's going to happen with that. What's going to happen, who's going to take care of the erosion that is currently present in the canal? And will these items be corrected before final approval? What access points will be made available to the county? I guess they are giving you some access. And by the way, there was a 25-foot or maybe a 15-foot access before this that was given by the prior owner of the property, and that was along our side to get back there. The flood zone map says A, AE, and X5 flood zones. So are we proposing that once they do their magic, these are not going to be flood zones anymore? Are we not going to have a problem? I'm a certified public accountant, and I know you can prove anything with numbers. I don't care. You tell me what you want to prove, and I'll prove it. So I know that the traffic is only be less, and, part of that traffic analysis was for the retail space. Those people are all going to be up on 70 for the retail space. They're not coming down 37th. They're coming along 70. So even though it looks like it's less, it's really not less on the areas where we're concerned. I just want you people to think about this and answer some of these questions before giving final approval on this project. Also, the plan is that the runoff is going to be reduced by 50%. Again, let's prove this by numbers. I understand the lakes will take some of it, but we are still, all the water is eventually going to end up in the canal, and we just want to make sure that that canal is properly maintained to help the rest of us. Let's see what else I want to say. There was something. Okay, the traffic and the fencing. As I said, the big thing is to have it in keeping with the rest of the projects in the area. Also, I did want to take one thing about the densities. What is Moonlight Pass and Gateway East or Gatehead East or whatever? I never heard of those. I know that when I looked, and believe me, I'm used to looking at a lot of documents in what I do, and so I went back through a lot of the planning commissions and stuff, and the project that's down on 63rd and Lockwood Ridge, I don't know, was it called Amalfi? It was a Amalfi, okay. When that was proposed, they went through the densities in the area, and before that particular project, which I think that might be one that's up in the 5s or 6 point whatever, the highest density in our area was Mandalay at 3.3. Everybody else was below 3. So I don't know where this 6 and 5.9, maybe they can tell me where those are. I don't know Moonlight Pass or Gatehead East. If it's near us, I guess I must have missed it being built. I don't know. Okay, so that was another question that I had. I don't want to miss any of my points here. We did the landscape buffer. We did that. Okay, one of the other things is 39th Street, which is a local road and proposed to only be a local road. You asked about, can they walk to the shopping? Well, you'd be taking your life in your hands. There's no room for a sidewalk there. 39th Street has become just a kind of a backup thing because of the entrance to the public shopping. The public shopping over here, and directly across is the post office, and then off of the spur for the public shopping is the bank. I mean, if you want to get into the bank, people are trying to get in front of you, you can't. So people stop because they want to turn into the bank, and they can't. So there is a big traffic problem there. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
May I ask a
Mr.
clarification
Yes,
question?
please. Ms.
Ma'am,
Ms. Nim,
could I ask you a quick question?
you would please step back up.
The wall landscape buffer that you're discussing, is that the one that is behind the 5 lots on Court B?
The original, the old project that was there was along our whole line there. It was along the line. We have a fence there right now. Our pool is on this side of the fence. We have an anchor fence. But they had said that they would put a landscape buffer with a wall. I mean, that will cut down on noise. It will cut down on, it will make security.
I understand. I just wanted to, for my own
Yeah,
clarification, I wanted
and that was
to
in the
understand
prior
where
plan.
that was.
And now he's saying now they're going to put up a fence, but we prefer a wall.
Right. We're going to allow the applicant to clarify. I see some inconsistencies with what some of the neighbors understand to be true and what's being proposed. So we'll allow clarification with rebuttal on those elements. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are all the cards that I have for people who signed up to speak. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter? If you would, please state your name and that you have been sworn.
My name is Lori Gale. I have been sworn. I'm a past resident of Gateway East, which is to the east of Garden Lakes. It is a neighborhood that was there prior to Garden Lakes. It's older than your community. It's off of Lockwood Ridge Road.
Okay, I never knew the name of that.
Yes.
We need to limit dialogue.
I'm sorry.
Certainly,
We
sorry
need
about that.
statements on the record. so.
My question is, this is 158 single-family dwellings. Family means children. Are the school buses going to be stopping on 37th to pick up and release these children? If so, to me, that calculates 6 stops a day, 5 days a week, a lot of traffic congestion. Will there be streetlights in this neighborhood so that these children who will be standing out there in the traffic in the morning be safe? I know in a lot of neighborhoods, the buses do not go in to do turnarounds and to do pickups. This is a concern of mine as a mother and a grandmother. Will he be providing streetlights within the neighborhood or streetlights at the entrance to the neighborhood so that the children will be safe? Will there be an opportunity or a spot for the buses to pull maybe out of traffic? That's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter? If you would, please step forward. Seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing, the public comment portion of the hearing. Mr. Pendley, when are those elements with regard to school bus scheduling and operation, when are those determined?
We have made a preliminary determination at this time that a school bus stop would be at 37th Street East and State Road 70. That may change. It possibly changes every year, but right now, that is where we expect it to go.
And then with regard to the typical operation, in my experience, I've got 3 kids also, and it's typical that the buses don't go into neighborhoods. They're usually at county rights of way. Is that?
That is correct. Typically, the only time we would go into a neighborhood is if there's a special needs child that would have difficulty getting to a bus stop.
Okay. And I appreciate the comments that it's a concern, but it isn't really anything that falls under the authority of this particular board. I believe that's an operational issue with the school board, which operates independently from the county, the process we're going through.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Horgan?
Yes. With that said, did I hear earlier that 37th does not have any sidewalks? Is that correct? And it will not have any sidewalks?
We will.
You will have sidewalks on 37th.
So
Mr.
the-
Chairman, we can't have people talking from the audience.
Yeah,
But the-
right.
The member just lays his question on the table, and the
Yeah.
staff will answer it, or whoever.
Right, if you would just lay the question.
Yeah, that is the question. Is there going to be sidewalks on 37?
So we'll address that during the rebuttal. So let's go ahead and go to the staff closing comments. Yes, ma'am. No, I'd like to have you first.
Margaret Tusing with Building and Development Services. To answer their question regarding 37th Street, adjacent to their property, there will be sidewalks located on both sides of the property. So yes, there will be sidewalks. There are currently no sidewalks on any of the projects adjacent to any of the roadways. And then we also wanted to discuss, putting the stipulation regarding the 6-foot wall, but perhaps the one I wrote isn't going to be the end of the stipulation, so when the applicant comes up, but I did write something so you would be able to read that into the record, so I need the applicant to let me know if there's going to be any additional changes to that.
Okay.
And then, so before we close, I would just like to be able to read, I have it written up, but it might change, so.
Okay, all right. We'll give you the opportunity to read that into the record.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bauer.
just for clarification, the sidewalks, are they going all the way to State Road 70? Or are they ending somewhere?
For the record, they're depicted to go to connect with the State Road 70.
Thank
So everywhere their project touches 37th or 39th, they've got sidewalks, and on the site plan in your packet, they're depicted extending to the existing sidewalk on State Road 70.
So, again, for clarification, Mr. Davis, the only sidewalk in this area will be, the limits will be from State Road 70 to the edge of this property?
From looking at the site plan, it looks like the sidewalks will extend from 70 down the east side of 37th to 39th, and on the west side from State Road 70 down to the south edge of that pod with 5 dwelling units on it, and then also provide sidewalk connecting to the one on 37th from 39th along their frontage over to the existing sidewalk at the church. But there would still be a gap sidewalk along 39th from there to the shopping centers to the east.
Okay, thank you. And since you're on the mic, I've got an additional question. The realignment of 39th, is that, what's the history with regard to the realignment of 39th?
I believe that's a
Is it 39th or
37th that
sorry.
was proposed to be realigned. With the prior approved plan for this site, they did depict a realignment of 37th that would have, I don't know how much, portions of it would have been straighter, but they'd still have to have introduce some curves to get over to where it connects to 37th with State Road 70 today. So I don't have a picture of it with me, but the alignment previously, that is what we've got now. What they had previously had, the control points were where 39th and 37th connect today, and where 37th connects to State Road 70 today. But in between, it went on a more north-south alignment initially, and crossed Gap Creek at a right angle, and then curved again to connect to State Road 70. At the time, they were proposing some residential and office development, and I think that may have been intended to create a better separation there for compatibility purposes. With this exclusively a residential development now, and with the existing 37th alignment being where it is and apparently able to provide a future 4-lane facility at the time it's needed, staff, I guess we discussed it with the applicant, but was ultimately determined not to be necessary to implement the project as proposed. So we found it acceptable and consistent with the comp plan to use the existing alignment.
Okay, thank you. And then one follow-up question for Ms. Tusing. Does Manatee County have a definition for new urbanism?
The pictures that I showed for the new urbanism is more about having smaller lots, but having shared common space is what that is. Similar to when you used to have streets with, houses built closer to the street, and then you had a sense of community and a sense of, that you saw your neighbors. You weren't, 20, 50, 80 feet away from them because you have a front yard setback, you have a street, you have another front yard setback. So, that's what they're doing. And they're doing that pretty much on the east side of the property, not adjacent to anyone else. It's all internal to their project. And, rear-loaded garages, so the garages don't dominate the fronts of the houses because the houses front onto common property, to common areas, and then also having a common sidewalk.
But it's more of a description, not a defined
Correct.
use or
We do define neo-traditional.
neo-traditional. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Are there any additional questions for staff? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Thank you, staff. Mr. New, if you would, please step up for applicant's rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Don New again, I have been sworn. This is Devin Rushno, and he can explain he's the builder of the new urbanist component, and he can explain that a little better. If I could just address some of the things that the questions were. On the open space, the open space is not just lakes and 40% open space is a lot, but it's the upland areas and additional, some of the lakes. So it is a lot of open space. They don't have a name yet. They're considering several, but they don't have one yet. The existing approval does require, contemplate some affordable housing. We do not. These will be market rate housing. And will say, we work closely with staff about the access easements. We understand the importance of this drain, and if you see the additional easements, and we have additional exhibits too to show how far back we stayed from those and granted those easements. We understand the importance of it. And with the stormwater and traffic, I just say that the stormwater, particularly in traffic, it's an exact science nowadays. We have so much data, the models that we have to run for the no adverse impacts, and the standards that we have to meet with the site triangles and the design speeds and our turn lanes. It's all calculated out, and it's amazing how accurate they are. The trip distribution, they know which way they're going to go. Just because these guys have so much data on the engineering side nowadays, they can predict exactly how things are going to go. And also with the stormwater regulations that have been approved over the last few years through SwiftMud and local, it does drain better because you dig all those lakes and you direct it and you only let it off at a prescribed rate. So it's just engineering fact. There's some details here that are more suited towards the final site plan, really don't have a lot to do with us today on PSP. All those questions do have to be answered, rightfully so, when the final calculations take place. We're just approving the footprint more or less here today, but we'll move forward and answer all those questions. And Devin, you want to talk about the? Sure.
My name's Devin Rushnaw, and I have been sworn in. I'm part of the development team, but also my company, F Street Homes, would be the builder of what we're calling new urbanism. There's a lot of different explanations of new urbanism or neo-traditional housing. I'll tell you exactly what our product is. It's 20-foot wide, about 55 to 60-foot deep, detached, rear alley loaded with front porches. And the concern of the resident on the price points of the sale of these houses, it's actually more expensive to build the way we're building because of the rear alley load, because of the porch, the detail work that goes into the homes. These are not going to be able to compete with the lower end homes. Our square footages range around 1,600 square foot up to roughly 1,700 square foot in that area. The best example of this is that people know is Celebration, what Disney did with their community, and people can get a pretty good vision of what they were able to do. You see these type of communities in infill locations. They don't typically work in the urban sprawl areas. There are areas that, as somebody had mentioned, that you can have some pedestrian traffic, and I think our connection over to 37th, the sidewalks that go up to State Road 70, will lead them to all the commercial areas for bike riding or pedestrian walks. So if anybody has any other further questions, I'm certainly here to answer anything. Thank you.
I do have one question, maybe Mr. New or Mr. Rushnell, if you could answer. There was a question regarding specifically Section 508 and the intent with regard to any housing falling under that category. Could you
No,
make-
certainly not, and we couldn't meet that criteria with the price points that we're at.
So this is a for-profit project.
It's a retail house sale, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
Yeah, Mr. New, there was with this map that's up, I'm confused. There was a discussion that on, I think it was on the 5 lots on the south, that you were going to be offering a fence. And then a wall issue came up by one of the residents to separate your property from their common pool area or whatever. Are we talking the same area? I'm not sure where the wall was supposed to go.
Talking about a
Mr. New,
fence.
that if you could also, on sheet 13 of the plan set, there are 3 buffers described. 2 of the buffers have walls/fences.
Right.
If you could, walk through it, the entire project and the proposed.
Matt, too. Okay, couple of things. I was talking about, when I said, I was talking about a fence here. I thought that's what they
Okay, right.
wanted, so there. Sidewalks will be all the way down this side to the property that we own, all the way down this side, clear down to here, all the way up 39th to the property there. So that'll all connect in the very best we can.
Right, and again, you have several buffers described in sheet 13. Could you identify where additional walls and buffers, or not additional, but the character of each wall and buffer is along the property?
We're talking about the same area right here is what we're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Matt
Morris,
Morris, Matt Morris with Morris Engineering. I've been sworn as well. We do have 3 different types of buffers called out on our sheet 13. However, we're really only implementing, at this point, planning to implement 2 types of those buffers, the type A and the type C buffer. The type C buffer is noted with having a wall or fence where it's called for on the plan. So that's not saying that every type C buffer will have a wall. It will have a wall where it's called out in the plan view to have a wall within the buffer. So as of now, we're proposing our type A buffers is essentially our greenbelt buffers around the property adjacent to the other uses. And then our type C buffers would come along on the roadway. And the type C buffers that we're proposing in the roadway would have a 3-foot high berm with the landscaping on top of the berm and along the sides of the berm along the roadways. And I believe, as we've been talking, this buffer down here beneath these 5 lots is, I think, what's in question with the wall versus fence. So we can discuss that in a little more detail.
We didn't have one there before, but we proposed, as we proffered, a 6-foot fence there. And we did also, it's on the plans, actually, there's a 6-foot fence along that boundary right there, too, that's in the stipulation.
And could you please clarify or describe a fence? It's not a chain link fence, is it?
Typical PVC nowadays, so you
So
can
it's
do the.
opaque, you can't see through it?
That's right.
Okay.
6 feet high, it's usually PVC, you can make them either black or white or whatever color.
Where-
I
whereas-
believe they wanted a white one here? Beige.
Whereas
Along the church.
Whereas a wall would be masonry with a footer?
Or they do them out of styrofoam and stucco, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's opaque, I guess.
Excuse me.
Takeaway is it's opaque, you can't see through it.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Question on it?
Mr. Horgan?
And that, pardon me, I had the same respiratory issue.
Yeah, me too. All week long.
That wall/fence, whatever, fence, is that going to be landscaped on the adjacent property side?
The stipulation will say it'll be landscaped on the opposite side,
On the outside.
on the outside.
On the
To
outside.
benefit the neighbors, yes.
And that's typical with all buffers, is
It
it not?
is, it is.
Okay, are there any additional questions for the applicant? Mr. Rutledge?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question, saying that you're going to do what Disney does is a pretty
strong statement, but so I'd like to ask about the new urbanism plan. I mean, putting 20-foot wide houses doesn't make it new urbanism. So have you built these before?
Yes,
Where?
we're currently building them in Oldsmar, and we're getting ready to start building them at Longleaf up in Pasco County as well. Pat Neal also built them right down the road on Lockwood Ridge at Woodbury. It's very similar type product. And when I say Disney, it just gives you the best recollection of what Celebration looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the best, right?
Well,
And-
actually, a lot of what was built there was built by David Weekley Homes, who's the primary developer of this project. So it's not uncharacteristic of what's being built.
And so your customer for that type product, what have you found them to be in other locations?
You do this type of product in very infill locations, as I mentioned, and when you get into the infill locations, it's very difficult to target market to a particular customer. You tend to get all buyer profiles. Our homes, though, do not have a master down as designed right now, so we lose that typical senior type buyer. So we'll grab most segments other than the senior buyer that comes through.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. Mr. Bauer?
Can you move that map a little bit over? Just going back to the fence issue, the wall. The southern border, you're saying that is just,
This
Yeah.
is just landscaped.
so why not,
There's a fence there,
right?
a fence there.
So why not make it more compatible with the rest of the areas and wall that area too with the landscape on the outside?
I guess there's fans of barriers and non-fans of barriers. Just with the lack of density there and with the landscaping, it's just allowed by code. We actually exceed the code with the berm and the 20-foot buffer. It's supposed to be, I think it's required a 15-foot buffer there. So it's a matter of choice.
And my memory escapes me a little bit, but I do believe the vast majority, if not all the communities that are going to be south of you, they're all walled, aren't they?
I don't believe.
I don't remember.
No. Even Garden Lakes has a chain link fence up against the right-of-way on their east boundary as they come down. I'd like to address it because when you look at the walls that you would come through, you come through what is then a tunnel and lack of feel of compatibility. And when you have open areas and landscaping, it's a much softer sell, if you will, for the buyers that come in instead of everybody being walled off and not being able to see through. So I think it's a friendlier type of environment. That's the reason why we'd pursue that one.
And just for clarification, it's your intent that, or your position that it meets the intent of the code, if not the letter of the law?
Right. Well, in fact, I think our buffer areas are even wider than what was required by code. Is that right, Matt?
If staff can clarify, the road wide buffers meet the minimum requirements. The perimeter buffer is 20 feet where it's required to be 15.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, and I wasn't suggesting it wasn't within the code,
Right. Yeah.
just to clarify.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Seeing none?
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. And we ask for your approval so we can move forward and answer all the little details. Thank you.
All right. What is
Mr.
the
Chairman,
board's pleasure?
I would like to
I'm
hand
sorry,
out
I
just the
asked that
stipulation.
we have an opportunity for Ms. Tusing to provide the revised condition or stipulation.
We are proposing to revise stipulation number 5, which included the requirement for the opaque fence or wall adjacent to the life sanctuary, covenant sanctuary. So the new stipulation, the additional language will be, I'll read the whole stipulation. In addition to the required perimeter buffer, the applicant shall provide an opaque 6-foot fence or wall of approximately 775 linear feet adjacent to the life covenant sanctuary and an opaque 6-foot fence or wall adjacent to the south side of lots 154 to 158. Any required landscaping shall be located out on the outside of the fence or wall.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, what's the board's pleasure?
Question on that language, Mr. Houston. It says, any required landscaping will be on the outside. Does that indicate that there is required landscaping on the outside?
Yes.
My concern is that it's not left to be optional.
No, they have not requested any specific approval, so at the time of final site plan, they will have to meet all code requirements.
Thank you.
And that is a code requirement to have landscaping on the outside of the fence.
Thank you.
In the perimeter buffer.
All right, again, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeLesline.
based upon staff report, evidence presented, and comments made at the public hearing and findings, the request to be consistent with Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein, I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDMU-15-08P approval of the preliminary site plan and stipulations 8.1 through 8.6, B.1 through B.2, C.1 through C.4, D.1 through D.7, and E.1 through E.3. Granting special approval for the project, one located adjacent to a perennial stream, Pierce Drain, and Gap Creek, and two habitational structure within the 25-year floodplain as recommended by staff.
Thank you, Mr. DeLesline. Is your intent to have the motion include the modification?
Yes, sir, the new
Phase 5?
stipulation.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Rhodes, second. Is there any discussion or deliberation regarding this matter?
Mr. Chair, it also includes the new stipulation A6 on the affordable housing placement.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
for the
the
record.
motion is,
Yes, sir.
includes that, and Mr. Rhodes, is that your understanding that it
It is, correct.
So, thank you. Mr. Bauer.
The only thing I just want to say, I do like the idea of the less density instead of the prior approval. I think that is a benefit. I think just from the, from a board standpoint and their approval, I appreciate your opinion about a wall or no wall and what may or may not be the best. I think for that community, I think that might be the best thing to consider, and I think the board should consider with that. I do still have some safety concerns of the entrances. I don't know all the ins and outs, but with the potential widening of the road, I'm wondering if it makes sense to work with the county to do that sooner rather than later at the same time, if it should save on money and traffic down the road for the long term. But other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments before we call this motion to vote? Seeing none, Chair calls the motion to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye, passes unanimously. I'm going to close the public hearing for item number 5. I'm sorry, I'm out of order. And we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Okay, we've been requested to have a quick break, so we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll convene at 11 o'clock by my watch.
I thought we were going to have more questions and concerns with all the red shirts.
Hey. I'd like to call the public hearing back to order.
Public commissioners.
Yes. If you would, please make your way to your starting positions.
I don't think they're actually.
To the gate.
Yeah. Last call. Place your bets. Okay. Ms. Knapp, if you could, please read item number 7 into the record.
PDC 1518P, Home 2 Suites by Hilton, Excel Sarasota 1 LLC, a preliminary site plan to construct 59,000 square foot building for a 4-story hotel on approximately 2.5 acres on the west side of US 41, commonly known as 8260 North Tamiami Trail.
Thank you, Ms. Knapp. Ms. Moreland.
Good morning, Mr.
Morning.
Chairman and other members of the Planning Commission. I am Stephanie Moreland, and I have been sworn. The applicant and the applicant's agent are here, and the applicant is going to come forward with their presentation.
Thank you. And as the applicant stepping up, just again, please, for the record, have there been any ex parte communications regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. South. Gotta go.
Get this right. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Marla Huff of Huff Engineering, and I've been sworn. Also with me here today is the owner, Shoham Amin of XL Group, and Stacy Hamlin, the general manager of the Hilton Garden Inn, and the land use attorney, Bob Green. Staff did a great job of representing the project in the staff report, so I'll keep the presentation brief and hit the highlights.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Stephanie Moreland and Karen Stewart for the extra efforts they made to expedite this fast-track project. The site consists of 2.47 acres. And 2.7 acres west of the site was developed and constructed as the Hilton Garden Inn in 2000. The parcel that the subject project sits on was previously approved for retail, office, or restaurant use, and that approval expired on January 21 of this year. The mini warehouse use to the north was constructed in 1997. I served as engineer of record on all those projects. All those parcels were originally part of the old drive-in theater. I was also appointed by the Board of County Commission to serve on the Crosley Estate Advisory Board and later became a member of the Crosley Foundation. So I'm quite familiar with the properties in the area. This is now my 5th client associated with the tract of land. XL Group acquired the Hilton Garden Inn and vacant parcel this project lies on about 2 years ago. He has since completed a grand renovation to the interior of the Hilton Garden Inn. If you haven't seen it yet, I would encourage you to go take a look inside. To our south is USF. We are proposing a 4-story, 59,446 square foot Home 2 Suites by Hilton. We're requesting a special approval to allow a future land use of 1.0, which is allowed for hotels in ROR zoning, plus all the projects that are located in the entranceway need to request a special approval. The square footage we are proposing results in a FAR of 0.55, which is considerably below the 1.0 that is allowed, but we're still requesting the full 1.0. The site is surrounded by commercial zoned uses to the north, west, and south, and abuts US 41 on the east, with the Sarasota-Bradenton Airport located on the other side of 41. We received the FAA's approval for the building height on December 30, 2015. The entranceway requires a 20-foot buffer along US 41, which has been provided for on the plan. In connection with the development of this new hotel, we have recorded a full cross-access and parking easement between the 2 hotel properties. The owner agrees with all of the requested stipulations, except for stipulation 5, which we are asking for a modification to. This morning, we had a positive meeting with USF on that, and we both agree on how that stipulation should be modified. Bob Green will share the details with you on that later. As a result, we are tabling our specific approval request to close the USF driveway tie. I'll let Bob Green come forward now.
Ms. Huff, for clarification, you say you're tabling the request. Are you asking that it not be considered with this?
Well, as long as the modified stipulation is approved. But, you know, I mean, I would hope that staff would go along with it since both parties
Okay.
of the neighbors are agreeable to it.
Okay, I just wanted it to be clear that this matter will be final when we strike the gavel, so there's no opportunity to modify afterwards. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Bob Green, and I have been sworn. I'm the attorney for the applicant. Again, I'd like to thank staff for the hard work on this project and Karen for administering the fast track program, which is so important to bringing new projects to the county. Can't stress that enough. I'm pleased to say we only had one issue that came up during the review of this project, and it had to do with the existing driveway that comes off 41, and there is currently in the field a curb cut that connects into the USF campus. When I first got involved in this project, I did a title review, and there are no recorded easements either on the hotel property or on the USF property. So in legally, what exists on the ground is just a curb cut between the two properties. We initially opposed stipulation number 5 because it required a grant of a cross-access easement that really wasn't cross-access. It was just access through the hotel property. And the county code does say in the entranceway there should be cross-access easements between the neighbors to improve the traffic situation. Pleased that we have met with USF, and they are amenable to granting a true reciprocal cross-access agreement so that this driveway can be used, USF, to enter and exit onto 41 through the hotel property, and the hotel guests, employees, to use the driveways on USF to enter and exit from their US 41 entrances, and also, I believe it's Seagate Drive. And what we are asking for in terms of a modification of that stipulation is that wording be added at the end of the stipulation. And the existing stipulation 5 reads, "The existing paved cross-access along the southern boundary adjacent to USF shall be retained and documented in an easement agreement and recorded in the public record." And what we would ask is that the following wording be added to that stipulation, and this has been provided to staff. Contingent upon USF granting a reciprocal cross-access easement to the hotel property. So we intend to proceed with USF, work up that agreement, and get it recorded in due course, and think this will be an improvement to the whole area there as far as this cross-access situation. So I'm very pleased with the approach from USF and being able to work this out. So we are asking that that stipulation be amended, and we'll get up and speak if other issues come up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Rutledge?
Yeah, Mr. Green, can I just ask you a couple of questions about the stipulation? So your statement was that there's nothing in place today. So basically, there's a common use of this access point with no documentation between the property as exists and USF, right?
That is correct.
So everybody's just driving around doing whatever they're doing.
That's correct.
You're proposing putting this in writing so we kind of know what they're doing. Is that kind of,
Yes, the staff is trying to enforce the intent of the code, which says in an entranceway, you try to keep as much traffic off the main road, the arterial road, US 41, and Mr. Davis is much more up on this than I am. But the intent is to use cross-access as much as possible. We've done that within the property between the two hotels, which have separate owners. They have full cross-access, and what we're planning to put in place here is cross-access with USF so that the driveways can be shared and keep traffic off US 41 as best we can.
Okay, Mr. Horgan.
The only thing that pops into my mind is there going to be an issue with parking, cross-parking between the
Not
properties?
between USF and the hotel. There's no proposal for cross-parking between those two properties, just cross-access use of the driveways.
Whereas the agreement between the other hotel, there is parking and access.
That is correct, full cross-parking. So any customer of either hotel can park in any parking space.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to the staff presentation, part of the public hearing.
Once again, I'm Stephanie Moreland, and I've been sworn. I do have a presentation prepared. Would you like to see it since the issue has been resolved?
I don't think I do. Any of the other commissioners? No. I do have a question regarding this. What is staff's opinion with regard to when this agreement would be implemented?
Well, since we feel like now they are in accordance with what we wanted to keep that cross-access open in, so that it resolves the issue with what the entranceway is asking for. So now that they are in agreement to do that, I think the issue has gone away.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could address that point.
Yes, ma'am.
Having consulted with Mr. Green during the recess, I believe the intent is by the applicant's attorney to diligently negotiate the cross-access agreement documents on both parties' behalf.
Right.
And have them signed and ready before the board meeting in, on, what's that date? March 3rd, because otherwise the applicant will have to proceed with their
Yes.
request for a
That-
specific approval, and they've sort of asked you to hold an abeyance at this point.
Okay, that's exactly why I'm asking, because it seems that a third party could control the process.
Yeah, and
if
I'll
if
assume
it's
the applicant will
addressed.
confirm that when they come down for rebuttal.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions for staff? Seems like the one issue that was an issue is no longer an issue.
funny how that happens.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ms. Moreland. We're going to move on to the public comment portion of the hearing. I have one person, actually, there's a gentleman from USF that I think would like to speak, but we also have Ms. Lori Gale. So, Ms. Gale, if you would, please step up. And then, I'm sorry, I don't even, Mr. Welch, I believe you asked for 10 minutes, but I don't know if that's necessary. Ms. Gale, again, if you would, please state your name and that you've been sworn.
My name is Lori Gale, and I have been sworn. I'm a resident of Manatee County, and I think that this is an excellent project. I live down in that area just off 41, and I'm happy to see that this piece of property is going to be developed into a nice hotel. And I think it'll be a big asset to that area of the county.
Thank you. I concur with Ms. Gale's comment. Mr. Welch, you didn't provide a speaker card, but you did request to speak. So if you would, please state your name and that you have been sworn.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. K.C. Welch, Assistant Vice President for Economic Development and Government Relations, University of South Florida.
Thank you.
Did submit a letter for 10 minutes. I just wanted to make sure I had ample time to answer any questions of the commission. So preceding that, I would just like to make some general comments that the University of South Florida is very supportive of development of the Southwest portion of Manatee County, specifically the US 41 Tamiami Trail corridor, and specifically all the adjacent properties in our area. We think that is, the redevelopment in the entire area is a boon not only to Manatee County, but to the university and that whole district, including the Manatee County-owned property of the Crosley Estate. I just want to make sure for the record that this commission know that between 2010 and 2020, the USF Sarasota Manatee Campus Master Plan was approved by the County Commission in 2013. Our current 2015-2025 Campus Master Plan update was approved by the University of South Florida Board of Trustees this past year, 2015. And our latest campus development agreement between the university and Manatee County government, which was adopted in 2005, expired in 2012, but we're currently working with the county staff on negotiating that as well. Just want to be clear that both our master plan and the campus development agreement identified this north-south road cross-access as an important between Seagate Drive, our main campus entrance drive, and the entrance to what we colloquially call the Hilton Garden Inn property. That's important to us. Also, want to make sure that it's clear to this commission that the University of South Florida entered into a contract with Manatee County with the area transit service to provide transit service to our faculty, students, and staff. That is a flat fee agreement, so anyone that has a USF card can utilize the Manatee County area transit, and was in hopes that the next step of that agreement would have an actual bus stop on our physical campus to improve that transit access, because the current access points are far distances north and south of our campus on US 41 proper, not interior to our campus. So I just want to make sure that was on the record. And last but not least, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and just want to say that for the record, we're amenable to working with our partners and our neighbors next door to making sure we properly record the easement agreement.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Welch?
Just where'd you get your tie?
University Bookstore.
That's a plug.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else in the audience who didn't provide a speaker card but would like to say something on this matter? Seeing none, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. And staff, do you have any closing statements? Staff?
You have anything? Stephanie Moreland for staff. I don't have anything to add or take away from this, except that your motion is going to change a little at the end, where we included the denial for the specific approval. That will go away.
Okay. And again, for the record, staff supports the amended.
Yes,
Thank
staff
you.
supports it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Applicant, is there any rebuttal?
Mr. Chairman, have no rebuttal, but I would like to clarify that in terms of timing of the easement agreement, I'm sure that we'll proceed promptly, but there may be timing issues on USF side because they're a bigger corporation, may have to go in front of their board. I can assure you the Hilton Garden Inn owner is a quick decider. But so I can't commit to a timeline to having it executed and recorded because it's outside of my control. I can commit that it would be done promptly, and that is certainly our intent.
Okay, thank you. I think, of course, if it's at least executed, maybe not recorded by the time it gets to the BOCC, that would eliminate some of the concern. But I think that a commitment to resolve would suffice if it has to go.
Yeah, I think both sides have committed to having a true reciprocal cross-access easement recorded as it should have been previously, and that's what we intend to do.
Okay. And Ms. Schenk, does the county attorney's office have any concern with regard to if we grant the application as amended with regard to executing it if it
Well, I
moves forward.
think we have to leave it open, like Mr. Green said, because like we can't give USF veto power over their CO or their site plan down the road.
So, how do we,
Well, if it doesn't work out, the applicant will come back and ask for a specific approval.
Okay.
But
And
they think that they can work with USF to get the cross-access.
if it makes it to the board with a specific approval to the BOCC, is it necessary that they start the process, come back through the planning commission?
Well, yes, it's their risk, but
Okay.
right now, staff is recommending against waiving that cross-access provision because it's a code requirement in the entranceway.
Mhm.
So it gets us all on the same page by leaving it stipulated as is.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeLesline.
based upon the staff report evidence, presented comments made at the public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein, I move to recommend adoption of the Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDC-15-18P, approval of the preliminary site plan with stipulations A1 through A5 still?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And B1, granting special approval for the project in the entranceway and exceeding the floor area ratio of .25 in the ROC FLUC
As recommended by staff.
as recommended by staff.
Okay, thank you. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Horgan, second. Chair's going to call well, first, is there any deliberation? As I thought, none. Chair will call the motion to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Again, passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, and with that, we're going to also close the meeting. So, thank you.
Chairman?